On tonight's agenda, the phrase "out with the old and in with the new" seems apt. Having heard last week from yesterday's men, former Chief Ministers Allan and Tony Brown, this week we hear from MHK newbies Andrew Smith and John Wannenburgh. The political contrast between the old and new views and opinions is certainly noticeable, and long may their optimism continue. Andrew, this is something that's been an ambition of yours for quite some time, but eventually you got there.
That's right. They say if at first you don't succeed, try again, and I did that. Obviously, I think my political career first commenced on the Isle of Man, on the local board of commissioners, as Laxey commissioners as it was in those days. And then I stood against Steve Roden in the by-election in 1995. And then obviously, as you know, the previous election to this one, 5 years ago, 2016.
And John, is politics, is this a game you've often wanted to be involved with, or is it something that just came to you in an aberration over the summer?
Well, I've always been interested in politics. I can't say I've always been interested in Manx politics, but given the COVID situation and the support offered to small businesses, it was something which came to me as a small businessman, that I felt I could do better than what was being offered to us. And I stood ready to say that we need to look after small business. And I had to put my money where my mouth was. And that's why I stood. And happily I was elected.
And it's encouraging that after 3 months you still say happily that you were elected. That's a good start. Whether you'll be saying...
I like to win, Phil. I like to win.
Good. Oh, well, that's important. So in terms of that then, in terms of your motivation, could you tell us a little bit more about where you thought the difficulty was and why... what you felt you were going to be able to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my background is primarily in hospitality and entertainment, and anybody who knows anything about those two industries will know that they were hit particularly hard over the COVID period. And entertainment. I mean, when they closed the borders, effectively my business ceased to exist overnight. And I was supported, certainly. Was I supported 100%? No. But and when I say I mean businesses like mine, and it was very frustrating to know that my business that I'd worked so long and hard for was literally gone overnight. And no one's to blame for COVID, but let's support small business. And I think right now, over the last 12 months, over the last month, over the Christmas time, these small businesses, primarily hospitality and entertainment, they are taking a lot of body blows that are unseen by a lot of people. And we need to do better than what we're doing.
And certainly there is a kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation with government. So government has been much more relaxed, I think, in terms of its approach this time round. We haven't been told everyone has to stay at home, everyone has to stay away from business. And yet people remain concerned, and therefore they're voting with their feet to a certain extent.
Well, when you change the operating environment, as a government, then we are duty bound to look after those people whose operating landscapes change. We may not put a lockdown in place in name, but when we change conditions where there is a lockdown in all but name, then we have a duty to act. We want these businesses to be around in 12 months' time, and if we don't act, they won't be. It's as simple as that.
And just before I bring Andrew into this, you've had 3 months now. There are some members who believe that they have 5 years to get their feet under the table. Actually, you don't. You need to have started making decisions and making things happen in a fairly swift period of time. Have you worked out yet how you're going to influence this particular area of concern?
Well, I'm going to support wherever I can, and I'm going to lobby the Treasury to make sure, and including Mr. Smith here, to make sure that we have adequate support in place, whether it's relaxed work permit systems, whether it's getting rid of 0-hour contracts. We have to look at all different angles on how we're going to do this. And just because I'm elected doesn't make me have all the answers. But collectively, I hope that we can pull together. And I will shine a torch on hospitality as much as anybody else, if not more than anybody else.
So, Andrew, this has beautifully introduced you. I mean, first of all, I should say congratulations in your meteoric political rise. It's quite rare for newly elected MHKs to go straight into Treasury, and you're one of two that's done that. So, tell us a little bit about how you became a member of Treasury, and then also John has thrown the gauntlet down. How are you going to sort the problem out?
Yeah, well, I think the initial thing is obviously being an accountant by profession and experience, and also having served time as a civil servant within Treasury previously, were part of the reasons as to why the powers that be decided that Treasury was a good place for me, and I was happy to do that because I feel that I think we've had too many governments where you've had round pegs in square holes. So I think that if you've got a passion for something and your leaders listen to it, then you've a better chance of achieving something. So I think that's what I've managed to do. So I'm very happy with that. And I'm still content after 100 days or so. And picking up on what John said, obviously I've also got small business interests, so I understand the issues that affect the businesses, especially hospitality, but that has a knock-on effect throughout the small shops and all these various other retail outlets. And as you mentioned earlier, people do, although we may not have the same restriction in place that we've had previously with COVID, people still walk with their feet, they make choices. And I think it is important that from a Treasury perspective, as John rightly says, we've got to support as many as we can. Obviously, we've got to have a pragmatic and a balanced approach, because obviously you can only pay out what you've got in your reserves, as it were, and from your income streams, which is another reason why I believe we're taking a more not precautionary view on this occasion regarding COVID restrictions, because we know that as soon as you go down the route of either a lockdown situation or even a circuit breaker situation, then that has even a more detrimental effect on the whole economy. And if you've no income coming in, then you've no money to pay anything out. So it is a balance, but yeah, sometimes very, very challenging.
And the role of a Treasury member, and I suppose of Treasury, I mean, the very first thing that you're having to do is put together a budget. You've got a new administration. The policies, the rules of the game, so to speak, haven't been fully formulated. So presumably the budget. I mean, obviously you can't tell us in detail what's going to be in the budget, but the budget must follow to a certain extent what's already been set by the previous administration. Yeah,
the current Pink Book is under in draft form now, and obviously all the various departments have had their meetings with Treasury and obviously been jockeying for position because of things, as you rightly say, that was already in train. So we've had to consider those plans and procedures, and take a view as to what we can either halt or what needs to continue, and whether that the time frame of those projects, how they may need to be readjusted or realigned with obviously the income that we have to play with. But obviously from a Treasury perspective, it's not just about the budget, but it's also about the investments that government holds and also the strategic assets that government hold to ensure that all those are playing their part. Because we can't take we have no time to take prisoners at the moment. Every pound that we earn either through investment or through taxation has got to be very, very well spent, and we've got to be very good guardians of that Treasury money.
So, John, obviously you've had lots of experience in the private sector running businesses, but the public sector is quite different. And whereas in relation to the Treasury in a business, that's basically somebody at the top decides how they're going to spend their money. it's slightly different in our circumstances, in government circumstances.
I'm certainly finding that out, Phil. It is a very different culture to what I've ever had before, and it has taken time and will take time for me to get my feet under the table. That said, it's been very interesting. And I'm not sure that I'm at a disadvantage just because it is like that. I'm quite happy to question, and I have done, whether it comes to the Manx gas price increases, whether it comes to Liverpool ferry terminal project. And I will question and I will challenge without fear or favour from anyone. And I'm very relaxed about that.
So how are you actually going to achieve the policies and the ideas that you'd put forward at the election?
Hopefully I can influence people who are like-minded to come along with me. And if I can convince people who are not like-minded the strength of my arguments, then we can get somewhere. I'm not sure I can tell you that I've got all the answers. I haven't. But I'm going to give it a bloody good shot.
You're listening to MHK's Andrew Smith and John Wannenburgh. And of course it's not necessarily about having the answers, it's knowing when people who have got the answers have come forward with them, recognising those answers,
yes.
isn't it? And
yes.
encouraging and assisting, facilitating perhaps is the word, those people in delivering the solutions.
Yeah, and you know, we are just a part of the sum of the parts, shall we say. I'm just one of many. And it's not just the politicians to get things done, it's the civil servants as well. And between us, I think we've got all the capabilities we need.
Andrew, for you, it's slightly different in as much as you've had experience with the local authorities, so you do know how public services, public administration works on the island. Have you been surprised or indeed shocked by anything you've seen since you've been in Tynwald?
I wouldn't say that I've been shocked. Sometimes you do look dismayed at certain things that transpire, but I wouldn't say that I've been shocked. But I think just picking on some of the things that John was saying there, I think as well as working together as a team, and I think at the moment, especially regarding the Island Plan, we've been all involved in that. From Chief Minister down. We've had a lot of consultation. I don't think any of us can complain that we haven't been fully engaged in that to try to develop this island that we are hoping to achieve over these next 5 years. But I think more than that, when you can't forget the people that have elected you once you get in. So I'm a great believer in continuing to have that ongoing dialogue with your constituents, because there are many, many qualified people out there. We don't need external consultants to tell us all these various things. There are loads of people willingly offering information because they dearly love the Isle of Man as well. So that by working together with them, we can then shape from a political perspective, and we're working with the great officers and civil servants that we have to actually achieve the best for everybody. So you're in a situation here, we're in a very privileged position of being able to have a win-win-win situation, and I think that's fantastic.
And certainly, Andrew, in your election meeting, the one I attended anyway, in Laxey, the hot topic was the sewage treatment plant, and I hear you talking about possible rearrangement of priorities in terms of the finances. So you're in an excellent position for Laxey sewage to float to the top.
Yeah. Pardon the pun, as you would say, but yeah, we wouldn't. I am. But again, you cannot abuse. As I say, you cannot abuse that privilege. So therefore, in some cases, I may even have to declare an interest. In fairness. But yes, we've got to fight for that, and obviously we had major issues with, as you know, flooding in Laxey. But again, I'm looking at that from a perspective also from an island viewpoint, because whatever we can agree with the various agencies, DOI, etc., regarding flood prevention, and we've now got the flood hub in place, which is island wide. Whatever we can agree and finalise for Laxey will benefit the whole island, because then others can actually kind of benefit from what we've managed to achieve. And as I say, at the moment, I can't fault the work that's actually been done following the disastrous flood we had in 2019.
And of course, the whole issue of climate change, whether it's the mitigation side, i.e. reduction in emissions, or whether it's the adaptation, which is very much what's happening in Laxey, this is an area, again, which probably needs quite a bit of government attention.
It does, and the other thing is, as you fully understand, environmental issues are not free and they're not cheap. They are exceptionally expensive. And when we're talking about heat source pumps and all these green issues and transitioning from the carbon fuels that we have to green, it's a costly business. And we're not talking pennies, we're talking major costs here.
But then, of course, the other side to that is the cost when the floods happen and the tide overtops the seawall and things like that, which, again, have a fairly dramatic impact on...
That's right. So it's a case of, again, balancing the physical effects that people experience and can witness daily vis-a-vis what we're looking to try and achieve with our environmental policy and green energy, and then obviously having the money in place to support and substantiate all that.
John, in relation to climate change, what's your position with regards to what the next step should be?
I'm all for climate change, but I'm also all for not bankrupting the economy to get there. Now, for example, the Kroger gas field. We've just given the 4-month extension. I'm fully supportive of that. And when we've got the information from that, then we can make a balanced decision as to what we should do. If there's going to be £10 billion worth of gas in there, then I'm afraid to say that I would fully support going for that gas and doing it. I mean, for instance, if tomorrow we discovered a diamond field or a gold field up on Snowfell, nobody's going to tell us we're not going to dig and get the diamonds and the gold. So if there's £10 billion worth of gas in Kroger, £2 billion worth of VAT there, that can help transition us to that green climate change that we want. And the infrastructure for the fossil fuels is in place right now, so we can use it right now. The infrastructure for the green agenda is not in place right now, and right now people are hungry and cold on the Isle of Man. It's a luxury to pretend otherwise, and we've got to help people who need the help.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the current situation with Russia and the gas does make us realise just how vulnerable we are.
So the price and the supply is an issue there. Where, again, if Kroger was developed, and there's a lot of ifs and buts, but if it was developed, then at least we wouldn't be beholden to them. Yes, the price would be, we would have to pay what the going rate is, but we don't have to go and bend a knee to these autocratic regimes.
Working out how that whole taxation shift is going to happen, that must be quite a challenge for you in Treasury.
Yeah, it is, obviously, because your fuel duties mainly obviously depends upon spend. So therefore, if for argument's sake we're coming back to COVID and you've got a lockdown situation, you've got nobody travelling anywhere, you've got nobody spending, so therefore obviously fuel duty does decline. However, in saying that, we are limited in what the Isle of Man can physically do to change some of the duties and some of the VAT bans that are actually in place. We do have some manoeuvrability, but obviously we are limited by the UK because a lot of it is in agreement with them. The last thing you need to do is to start shouting and bawling about VAT and customs unions and how much do we pay the UK, this blah blah one thing another, because they are listening to the Tynwald debate on a regular basis. They are reading the newspapers on a regular basis, and the last thing you need is for them to recognise that we are in some way trying to disrupt the mutual agreement that we have, and then that just sets hairs on it, and before you know it, we would definitely be in a worse situation were it not for the good relation that we have currently with the UK.
You've taken on the role as a member for Home Affairs. It's a department which is relatively small compared with most of the departments of government, but there's some fairly significant pieces of legislation and areas of legislation that Home Affairs needs to tackle. What's top of the list at the moment?
Our remit, almost like Treasury's, is that we've got to keep the island safe, whether it's prisons, fire service or police. And then there's the blue light habit we keep looking at as well. There's a lot to think about, and I know that there's some legislation coming through for the domestic abuse bill. There are some significant pieces of legislation coming through which we all need to sign up to.
Yeah. And in terms of legislation, one thing that I have noticed is there's a lot of questions down on the Keys order paper, but not an awful lot of legislation seen yet, other than COVID regulations.
No, I think there are one or two things out. I mean, obviously, I did raise with the minister regarding the animal welfare, and I think that's already in train again now. So I think it's important that you're just reviewing what we can do, and also recognising, because we've heard this from previous Tynwald debates before our elections, that the Attorney General's chambers have only got so much legislative time. So we could you could put as many bills and legislation forward as you wished, but then there'd have to be an order of priority. And so there'd still be a running order and one thing or other. So I think it would be, a bit foolhardy to everybody to think that they can just throw the whole legislation all out at once and expect it to just everyone run with it. I think we've got to look at priorities and decide between departments what we believe those priorities are. And I think one of the things is, obviously, we're talking about poverty. We've got this new housing committee. We're talking about obviously delegating that housing away from DOI and under Chris Thomas. So there's all these kinds of things that are happening which are more important, should I say, than legislation in some respects, because people can actually say, well, physically something is happening, and then you look at the legislation that you require to support those new initiatives which are actually looking to hit the people immediately in the need.
And it's fair to say, John, I suppose the first thing you need to do is have a plan. You can busily go around producing acts of Tynwald, but if you haven't actually got a plan to hold it all together, then you're largely wasting time.
Absolutely, it's essential. And it's essential that we all support that plan.
And where are we up to with that plan?
Last night I was in Peel with a few of the ministers rolling it out. I think it was the last day of the rollout to get some feedback. So it's going from a late draft, I think, to being published as well very, very soon. But like all plans, the success of that plan will be measured in its delivery.
Final question, because we are almost out of time now. How would you like to be judged, assuming that you have enjoyed it so much that you want to stand again in 4.5 plus years' time? What are the things that you would hope to be able to say to the public, this is the thing that I've done which I'm most proud of, and as a result you should definitely be voting for me? Any thoughts on that?
Honest dialogue, honest feedback. No more smoke and mirrors. And it won't always be a good outcome, but as long as I've tried my hardest and I've communicated that, I think people will respect that. It's a big job, this, and there's many things that will alter whether it's successful or not. But as long as we keep communicating, and as long as we're honest, I think, and as long as I'm honest, and I certainly will be, I think I'd like that.
Yeah, definitely. Honesty is the best policy, and the continual interaction with the people that you put there, so that they can say, well, at least, if they're in the know, then they're a lot happier than surprises. And if you keep people say, look, this is what we're trying to do, well, they say, even if it's not possibly the exact outcome that we all desire, well, look, you're doing your best. Yeah. This is what we're trying to do. Keep them informed, keep them on board. Oh, happy days.
Impressed? They certainly seem enthusiastic to the task that lies ahead, and also appear optimistic about the government's chances of success. Andrew's meteoric rise to become a Treasury member is certainly one to watch, and John's insistence on plain speaking is admirable. But for now, I'm Phil Gawne, Guramayu. Thanks for listening.